Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to catch your eye so early in this debate. And may I say what a pleasure it is to see you in the chair. I think you are the first successful Labour candidate I've ever voted for. Although I have to confess, as I came away from voting for yourself and the Honourable Member for Ribble Valley, I did realise as a Yorkshireman I had cast my ballot for 2 Lancastrians. That was resolved later when I realised that in so doing I have at least silenced 2 Lancastrian members for a period. I've obviously been called as the first speaker in this debate, so I don't have any previous maiden speeches to commend. But I have spent the last week and a half sitting here, having hoped to have been called last week in the education debate, hearing more and more maiden speeches, and there have been some fantastic examples. And I can only hope this morning or this afternoon, that I set the bar sufficiently low that everything that comes after me this afternoon is an improvement. I want to begin by paying tribute to my predecessor in Brigg and Goole, Mr. Ian Causey, who was the only predecessor in the Brigg and Goole constituency since it was created in 1997. And I feel I should begin also by apologising to the House, not for ridding this country of a Labour Member of Parliament, I think that was rather a good thing, but for actually helping to break up the world's only parliamentary band, MP4, which Mr. Causey served with some distinction as its lead singer. I have been approached by 1 or 2 of the existing band members to ask if I can take his place, but alas, it's not to be. Ian served the constituency of Brigg and Goole incredibly well as the member since 1997. He was very decent in the election campaign and very decent in my dealings with him in the last 3.5 years. And I genuinely, Mr. Deputy Speaker, wish him and his family, who are incredibly loyal to him, all the very best for the future. As I stated, the Brigg and Goole constituency has only actually existed since 1997, but before then it formed constituent parts of other constituencies. And was represented by several distinguished members, one of whom still sits in this chamber today, and I'm pleased to say is now my friend and neighbour, the Right Honourable Member for Halton, Price and Howden, who served the Boothbury constituency between 1987 and 1997, which included parts of my constituency. The Brigg part of the constituency was previously served by Michael Brown, who will be remembered on all sides of this House and is still active in public life today. And the previous member for Scunthorpe also served a portion of the constituency for some time. Since I was elected, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a number of people have come to me and said, but where exactly is Brigg and Goole? So my job today is to, I'm afraid there are limits on this now, my job is to enlighten this House about the delights of the Brigg and Goole constituency. And mine is a somewhat difficult task because I do represent one of very few constituencies which actually crosses a county boundary. The constituency is made up 2/3 of North Lincolnshire and 1/3 of the East Riding of Yorkshire, where I myself was born and bred. Now, being a Yorkshireman representing a Lincolnshire seat can have its challenges, and I have to tread a very careful path. And it was an issue my predecessor actually had, in the fact that the Brigtown Football Club and Gouletown Football Club often play each other. Now, this can be a very dangerous situation for a Member of Parliament to find themselves in. And I'm pleased to say that my predecessor had a very good approach to this, that courtesy of the communications allowance, in which he sponsored both Brigtown and Gouletown football matches on regular occasions. It's a pleasure that won't be open to myself. The constituency was formed, of course, when the dreaded Humberside existed, which we are all delighted to have seen the back of. I'm pleased for the support on that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But the name does still exist today, and I probably have more to say on that in weeks and months to come. But we do have a very long history in the Brigg and Goole constituency, going back centuries. The Brigg is a small market town in North Lincolnshire, a very historic market town, with a very famous fair, which dates all the way back to 1205. And Brigg is also the gateway, depending on which way you enter, to the beautiful Lincolnshire Wold villages, many of which have played an important role in the history of this country. I also have the pleasure of representing a unique part of the country called the Isle of Axholme, which is a portion of land which is bounded on all sides by major rivers and was actually marshland until it was drained by Cornelius Vermuyden in the 17th century. And if you want an early example of English jobs for English workers, Mr. Vermeulen, who was a Dutchman, brought Dutch workers over and did come into conflict with the locals, and the king did have to intervene apparently and ensure that half of the workforce was English, which is something the previous Prime Minister was unable to achieve. It is also, the Isle of Axholme also houses the beautiful market town of Epworth, which of course is where John and Charles Wesley, the founders of Methodism, came from. And also on the Isle we have one of the world's largest trolleybus museums at Santoft, which I have to confess, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have yet to visit, but I will be visiting it very shortly. We also on the Isle have, we are home to Britain's oldest traditional tussle, which is known as the Haxey Hood, which takes part on the 12th night after Christmas and has some interesting characters in it, one of which is the Lord of the Hood. We have a Chief Boggin, and we also have a Fool. Now, I've been looking around this chamber, and I have allotted some positions for next year, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but it would be rude to say who I've given which position to. Goole, of course, is in the East Riding of Yorkshire and is Britain's biggest inland port, and is a company town, having been formed through the creation of the Ayr and Calder Canal. Also in the East Riding of Yorkshire is the small village I live in, the village of Ermine, which has a long history with the Percy family. We previously, or I said we, I suspect my links to the Percy family are more illegitimate and more feudal than perhaps I would like them to be, but Ermine is a very historic town, a very historic village where the Percys originally held the title to, and today our pub is still called the Percy Arms, and the refurbishment which has been taking place finishes today, and this evening at about 7 o'clock the pub will be opening again, and I would welcome anybody's attendance. My constituency also played a major role in World War II, with parts of the Mulberry Harbour being completed in Goole, and we also housed across the constituency a number of airfields, including RAF Santoft, Elsham Wolds, and also RAF Snaith, who have a fantastic memorial team which I am involved in supporting. Now, before I came to this chamber, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was a school teacher, and one of the issues I intend to champion while in here is the issue of not only school funding but also deprivation and school exclusions. And I'm delighted to have been called in the poverty debate because, of course, I do now represent a very large rural constituency, but having been brought up in the next door constituency in the city of Hull as a proud comprehensive boy, and there are two comprehensive boys in Parliament now, I'm pleased to say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, one on that side and one on this side. The issue of deprivation is something, and there may be another one, Hull comprehensive boys. But the issue of child poverty and deprivation is something, having taught in some of the most deprived schools in the city of Hull, which is very dear to me. And in particular, in my time here, I would like to champion the cause of excluded children, who I think it's fair to say in the last two governments, and maybe even governments before, have not necessarily received the attention they deserve. In particular, and it's important this figure comes out today, of course, is that the number of the children who are on free school meals are 3 times more likely to be excluded from school. And what I have seen as a practitioner in the last few years, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is we have had fine words from the previous government, but we have been hamstrung as practitioners in schools by a commitment to social inclusion. Now, the social inclusion agenda was introduced for very good reasons, but it actually had the opposite effect in secondary schools, in actually tying the hands of school teachers who wanted to deal with discipline. And discipline is at the core of many of the problems we face in our schools today. Now, I don't have time this afternoon to go into great detail about this, but what I intend to do in the course of my time here is to champion the cause of excluded children, because I really think that we're moving in the right direction in terms of the pupil premium, but we have got to accept that dealing with excluded children is expensive. There are good examples of excellent practice around this country which we need to take, and we need to move forward, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I would have liked to and loved to have talked for a great deal longer on this subject, but that's not going to be possible. I just want to end by saying that my time here, I also intend to be an independently minded local champion for the fantastic people of Brigg and Gould. So thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.